Tonight, as you probably know, we have Bob Hensey. There he is. And he's going to talk about the ARL grid chase and sharing my AHA moments, which really means aha moments. I was a little stumped by that initially as well, but he's our digital Jedi. As most of you know, he's an ardent FT8 operator and works, I know he's helped a lot of us out before. And there we go. He's our digital Jedi. And Bob is just a quick background. I know a lot of you know him, but I've learned a lot more about him getting ready for this presentation and him helping me out with a few things. But he got his technician in 2013, upgraded the general in 2014, and extra class in 2016. So he's on the fast track. I believe he, like me, runs just wire antennas, operates mainly HF, and obviously focuses on the digital modes. 157 DX entities confirmed in that short period of time. He's an active NARFL member, as evidence, as you just saw Nathan discussing how he was one of the top dogs in the colony contest, and he participates in the GQP for NARFL. Activated St. George Island for the NFARL 40th anniversary a few years back. He was on that team. He's also on the advisory board of EQSL for 2018 and a volunteer there. And he'll be talking, I guess, I'll let him explain about the grid chase, but if you don't know about the grid chase that the ARL sponsors, I checked on the webpage last night, and if I'm doing it correctly, Bob is 20th overall in the nation or world, is it? In the world, 20th overall. And first place in Georgia. And then I looked up my call, just to make it interesting. I'm 31,553 in the world, and 455 in Georgia. So there's some perspective. Bob's a great guy. Elmer to many digital ops, and he was my Yoda yesterday when I broke my FT8, called him on the phone, and in 20 minutes I was getting called by Belgium stations, which was pretty wild. So he's here to share his aha moments, and appreciate having you here, Bob.
How many people there? Just in case I need this later. Sounds like I'm getting out. Well, I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. It's been a lot of fun being a ham radio operator. I haven't been doing it that long, but I remember I saw digital mode and said, I really need to do this. This is something, I just really got to do this, but I could not get it to work on my radio. So I want to make a call out to someone here tonight. N4FN, Neil Foster, spent some time with me on the phone a while back helping me set up my station to do digital modes. I want to thank him very, very much for that. It's all your fault, Neil. It's all your fault. So I'm going to share some of my aha moments. I call them aha moments because, we're all hams. There's a reason why we're all here tonight. We like to explore, we like the adventure, we love learning new things, and we love those aha moments. It's like our drug of choice. So what I'm going to try to do tonight is share with you some of my aha moments that I've had while operating during the grid chase, and I hope you can take at least one of these away tonight back into your shack and make your ham radio experience that much better. So with that, let's get going here. Let's see, where do I point this? At you? Okay. So please do interrupt with questions and comments. I really would enjoy the interaction with you guys. So here we go. So what's a grid square? Well, I had to look it up because I didn't know what a grid square was. I mean, I know it was something that you had to stick into Logbook of the World in order to upload Q cells, but I really didn't know what it was. So it's actually the Maidenhead locator system. It was something done back in 1980 in Maidenhead, England, they designed and defined a locator system for use by ham radio operators to very succinctly describe where your location was in the world. And then later in 1999, they also decided that they'd use latitude and longitude as a reference, and they used as the basis for that the World Geodetic System from 1984. So here's a grid square, and I didn't realize it was 8 characters long. I've never seen an 8 character long grid square. Most of the grid squares you're going to see are 6 or 4. And they're based on latitude and longitude. This particular one that's up on the slide is from Hawaii. And as you can see, the first 2 characters is the field, the second 2 characters is the square, and that's the most common one that you see, the 4 characters. But then there's an even further refinement, a subsquare, and an even further refinement that I've never seen called the extended square. And all it really does is it allows you to very closely pinpoint where you are on the surface of the Earth. So here's a map I found on the internet. If you peeled off the surface of the Earth and laid it flat, at that conference, they came up with this system. And those are the grid squares that map the entire surface of the world. Let's see if I can get this to work here. So, you know, EM, you all know EM, right?
Yes.
We're EM 74 here, and I'm an EM 73. And you know, I mentioned Hawaii, which was BL. There's BL out there. Alaska's BP. And then, of course, if you talk to Europe, you see a lot of JOs, JNs, and England IO. So maybe you're familiar with some of those grid squares. And I found a really nice picture from ICOM of the grid square map for the United States. And I actually use this because I always thought it was interesting when you make a contact with somebody. Where are they? Where are they located? And then here's the one for Alaska and Hawaii. Those are some of the more common ones you'll see. Okay. So why are grid squares important in ham radio? Well, they do give your exact location, but one of the cool things is they allow for a computation at distance. Maybe some of you that operate digital modes, and specifically FT8, you see that little spot in sort of the lower left. When the software fills in the call sign in the grid of your QSO partner, there's a little distance that pops up. Tells you how far away he is. And what they're doing is they're making a calculation based on your grid square that you entered in the program and the grid square that the guy sent when he answered your CQ, or when he actually called CQ and you called him. Grid squares are very important for logging and QSLing. Online logging systems, Logbook of the World, EQSL, QRZ.com. When you create your account, they require you for each QTH to enter your grid square. Why? Well, it tells exactly where you are. Mine is EM73BX. Now there's some really nice URLs on the internet where you can actually figure out your grid square.
Question.
Oh, sure, I'm sorry. Question.
But you have only 6 characters in your grid square. Where are the other 2?
I didn't calculate it to that fine granularity.
How fine is the grid?
I'll be honest, I'm not exactly sure, but I know for 6, it takes you down to like, what is it, 10 square miles or 1 square? I forget. Does anybody know? I'll have to look that up.
I think the finest one gets it down to about 100 by 200 feet.
Really?
It's really narrow.
Yeah, it can be really precise. So if the Russians or the North Koreans want to shoot a missile at your house, you really don't want to use an 8-character grid square. Okay, anyway. And there's another link where you can actually convert GPS coordinates to your grid square. So if you don't know what your grid square is, there's a lot of tools on the internet that'll help you figure out what your grid square is. And I wanted to put a little plug here for the VHF, UHF contesters, because the grid score is actually the most important part of the exchange during the contest. That's what they need in order to score points in the contest. And that's what John was talking about earlier. And then here's an interesting point. Why would some US grids be considered DX? Well, wouldn't you brag about a 2-meter contact that you made to Oregon or Washington over a contact you made to Italy or France? I mean, that's a pretty good accomplishment to make a VHF contact to some faraway place. And so a lot of people consider that DX. Okay. All right, what's the grid chase? Okay, the grid chase uses just the 4-character grid squares. Every month is a separate contest. So they start over every month. So if you haven't been doing it, you can join in the fun. Say for September, it's a whole new month, and you can get a high place for the month of September. How does it work? You get 1 point for each unique grid square that you contact per band and per mode. So the modes are CW, single sideband, and digital. So you could get the same grid and get a point for that grid in each of those 3 modes. There's also a cumulative total for the year. So every month they throw that total into your cumulative total. And points only count if your partner uploads and you upload by the 10th of the next month, by 2359 UTC. Yes?
So one point for each contact by each mode, or you get
Okay,
4 points for one
so if I contacted you on CW, I'd get a point for your grid. If I also contacted you on SSB, I'd get another point for that grid,
Right.
and so on. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Yes?
But if I lived in the same grid, and you got me the same night, it wouldn't count.
Right. You only get the grid counted once. So if I got him first, and then I got you second, his is the one that counts for the point. But you know, it doesn't hurt to make a few extra contacts, because you don't know if your partner is going to upload.
Sure. Upload to what?
Logbook of the World.
See?
Yes, Jim?
That's what I say, it's not there.
What's not there?
LOTW.
It isn't there? I'm sorry. Yeah, the whole ARRL grid chase is actually being hosted in Logbook of the World. So you have to upload your contacts to Logbook of the World to play in the contest. Yes, Steve?
Also, everybody's entered. Just go look.
Yeah.
Whether you're signed up or not, you're
Yeah, so if you're uploading your QSOs to Logbook of the World already, then you're actually entered in the contest.
just go check your score.
All you need to go is go to the leaderboard webpage, put in your call sign, and look up where your place is in the contest. It's there. Okay, and then I've had some communications with the branch manager who's running the contest in the southeast, and he told me that there's going to be one catch-all collection run this coming February, and it's going to sort of kind of be an end year-end event tally, and they're going to count everything at that point. No cutoffs. They're just going to find out how many actual QSOs got uploaded to Logbook of the World during the year of the grid chase. And then they'll publish those results too. And that's per Bart Jonkey W9JJ. Okay. So what kind of strategy could you use during this contest? Well, it's kind of straightforward. You want to upload as many QSOs as you can to Logbook of the World, because each one could be a point. Using digital modes during poor propagation times is a pretty good idea, because we've had some really bad solar flux numbers lately. Now I'm going to tell you something that I've actually seen. The top stations in the world, They're basically running multiple radios on multiple bands at the same time, calling CQ. In fact, this K3 Whiskey, who's in first place, I mean, he's literally, all the time, he's got radios on at least 5 bands, and he's calling CQ. So you can imagine how he's going back and forth answering CQs. And he's got over 20,000 points in the contest. Another thing you can do is operate remotely. By operating remotely, you're actually in some other place in the world that may have different propagation conditions that might be better than where you're actually at home, and you can make more cues. And I actually do that. I have a friend who lets me operate his station remotely in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I operate it digitally. That's K4VBM stroke 7. And I've made over 1,000 QSOs on his station this year. Yes?
Why should that be legal?
It actually is legal in the contest rules. What you need to do is there's this feature in Logbook of the World where you can merge all your different calls together into one call. So all the QSOs count together. You do have to do the merge. But if you do that merge, then those cues that you made remotely count for your home call sign in the contest.
You're using a different grid when you're...
Yeah, when I'm operating as K4VBM stroke 7, I'm actually in grid DM26IF, which is a grid in Las Vegas, Nevada. And that's the grid they get if they contact me. Because that is defined in my K4VBM QTH. I'm stroke 7 QTH in Logbook of the World. Any other questions? And contesters have an advantage. And if you contest on the weekends, there's a lot of folks out on the weekends doing contesting. So you can make a lot of QSOs when you contest. Upload those to Logbook of the World. Get more points. So here's my challenge to you guys. See if you can make the top 25 for the state of Georgia over the rest of the year, in September or October, November, December. Just for one of the months. Give it a try. Okay. All right, so now I want to share with you some of the setup tips for digital modes that I've discovered as I've been operating. First of all, let's talk about your computer. All right, what sort of specifications for a computer do you need? It doesn't have to be a high-powered computer that has, 32 gig of RAM and a 10-core processor. Uh-oh, I turned it off, didn't I?
Yeah, hold on.
I had to get a drink when my lips are drying out here. Oops. Ooh, that's better. I gotta put that somewhere so I don't spill it. Of course, more is better in a computer, but even an older computer is going to work for digital modes. You do need a sound device. A dedicated sound device is better than a non-dedicated one. What I mean by that, usually a computer has some sort of sound card in it that you use for listening to videos or whatever else you do on your computer. It's not a good idea to use that for digital modes. You should have a separate sound device, and it can either be built into your radio. Some radios have the sound cards built into them. It can be a standalone device like a single Signal-Link USB, or it could just be another sound card that you stick in your computer itself. The other thing that you need to do digital modes is you have to be able to do cat control of your computer. Your computer has to be able to control your radio, has to be able to tell it to transmit. And that requires a cable between the computer and the radio, and then some sort of software, whether it be Hamrio Deluxe, OmniRig. There's a lot of things out there. I don't think there's any one best one. You may have to just try different things until you find one that you like. Besides cat control, there's some more esoteric things that that get involved, like virtual serial ports. Sometimes you have multiple pieces of software that you want to control your radio, but your radio only has one physical port. So there's software out there. An example of it is this VSPE by EtherLogic. And you put that on your computer and you create what's called a virtual COM port. And you can have multiple pieces of software talk to the virtual port, and they can all talk to your radio at the same time.
Correct.
There's also something called a port mapper. Sometimes some of the older software wants a real COM port. It wants to toggle one of the lines on the COM port to control your radio. But some of these newer radios, they don't have COM port interfaces. So what do? Well, you use something called a port mapper. And Steve here, where's Steve? Steve wrote one himself for his ICOM 7100 radio. What it does is it sits there like a virtual COM port, so that old software talks to his piece of software, and it translates the line toggle to a command to the radio. Makes it work. Right, Steve?
Either that or buy a $100 device to do it.
Yeah, and you know, we're cheap hams, so we don't want to do that.
But I'll spend 100 hours writing the software.
But you had fun, right? You had fun.
It was fun.
Okay. So some of the software that some of you folks, how many people have not done digital modes yet? Okay, well maybe we can get a few people and more people into digital modes, because there's some really cool software out there. One is this WSJT.X. It's written by Joe Taylor, who's a professor at Princeton University, and he's really come up with some really interesting modes for digital, including whisper and stuff that's used for meteor scatter. It's really interesting stuff. Then there's FL Digi, which is a really nice open source program that a lot of people like. DM780, which is a program that's part of Ham Radio Deluxe. There's this one done by a guy in, I think it's Switzerland, JT65HF, and that's his call sign, HB9XQX. That's a nice program that I've used. And then there's this program called JT Alert, which sort of ties a lot of things together and does some really cool things for you. And there's a whole lot more. Some are both Windows and Linux, some are just Windows. So you know, I'd really be happy if you got questions, send me an email, I'll try to answer it for you. One of the very important things, and John knows this from a couple days ago, is for the cyclic modes in digital mode, where there's a cycle of a certain length that just repeats over and over, and you have to be in sync with a certain time or they don't work. You need a time sync program like Meinberg NTP or Dimension 4 loaded on your computer, which syncs your clock on your computer to a known time sync source. And that's what makes these modes work. If you don't do that, it doesn't work. Yes?
Well, you can just go to your settings and just update internet time. And start a new session and it works.
It will work, but in my experience, you want to get a serious service like one of these two to keep it constantly in sync. Because do you want to lose that QSO with Indonesia just because your clock got out of sync?
Yeah, I'll comment on that real quick. If
Sure.
you do it inside of Windows, it doesn't take into account the 1 second it takes to ask the server to get a response back. So programs like this actually look inside the TCP packets and actually looks at the offset, the time, the round trip time, and subtracts that so you get a more accurate clock sync. Windows time.windows.com or whatever doesn't care about the 1 second being off. Do you use inside of JT Alert the grid chase function inside of it?
No, I do not, Steve.
Okay.
But there is a nice feature of the JT Alert software that'll actually tell you
If you need one.
if you need that grid, because unfortunately the WSJT-X software is not very good about telling you if you need a particular grid or even a DX across bands. If you get them once, in Italy once, that's all it's going to tell you, which is unfortunate. So that's what JT Alert does for you. It helps you know that I don't have Italy on 30 meters yet. I don't have Italy on 20 meters yet. And it allows you to make that contact, yes.
Where does JT Alert pull your history? Where does it pull the
Out of your
contact?
log.
Sync logbook of the world?
But there's a side to that. You know, when you sit there calling CQ, a lot of people say, well, I already got this quit square. So it's kind of, it's good that you can see the information of who you need, but it also means a lot of people may ignore you because they already got your grid square or they already got someone else. That's the downside of using something like that. To me, I try to answer everybody. But go ahead.
The FDA log to
Yeah.
it. So, but you can also set up with your HRD. So if you open up HRD and you use HRD to control the grid on FT8, it will
Yeah.
log it up automatically. You'll see it say confirmed. It will log up into your HRD
Log for log.
simultaneously.
Yeah.
But you can take that log and then you can search through that and pull that over manually if you want to. But it is good because especially if you're chasing states, you know, when little yellow comes up, you know, if like Nevada comes up or some state, Iowa comes up, or something that you want, it's interesting, you can go to them first. So it helps you plan, especially when you're trying to go to the United States.
Thanks, guys. That's some real great stuff on JT Alert. And that's why people use it, because it fills in the holes that are missing in some of these pieces of software. And JT Alert actually interfaces with quite a few of these other pieces of software. Okay, any other questions on this slide before I go on?
One last thing, that the cyclic that you're talking about, the main reason you want your clock exact is because that's what's used for forward error correction. That's what reconstructs part of the missing data. That's what makes FT8 work so well, you know, when you can't even hear the other station, but they're popping up on your screen because of the time sync.
Yeah, you don't use the Windows time, but there's the other time things you can sync to things work better. And there's also time dot net,
Yeah.
where time is,
Yeah.
time dot is, and that will tell you how far you're off.
Okay.
So it's for forward error correction. That's why.
All right, thanks, guys. All right, let's go on. Here's some more Digimode tips related to your radio. Of course, the radio has to have TX audio input and output ports. Some of the older radios don't have those, but most of the newer radios do. And of course, the levels at those ports have to work with the computer sound device. So the levels are important. The radio has to support cat control. I had to buy a special interface card for my old Kenwood TS940S that I picked up because it did not have a native, when it was manufactured, a cat control interface. Well, there was an add-on you could buy, but it didn't come native in the radio. And then you have to use the proper mode on the radio to do digital modes. And it's either USB or, I know on ICOM it's called USB data. And finally, and this is actually what this guy, N4FN, taught me, a proper AGC setting for digital modes is very important. ALC. You know, you're right. That slide is wrong, guys. That should be ALC.
So is this where the gain, like on the IC setting 100, is barely showing for ALC or showing a lot?
You want it showing very little.
Okay.
And I'm going to get to that.
Oh, okay.
ALC deflection.
Yeah, I'm going to get to that. I actually have a slide about that that dives into a little more detail. So we'll get to that in a little bit more. Okay. So here's some tips and good practices for operating for digital. First, I'm going to just define what I mean by chatty modes versus cyclic modes. Chatty modes are modes that you can do rag chews on, like PSK31, RIDI, Feldhell, Livia. Those are what I call chatty modes. And then there's cyclic modes that have actual defined cycle times in order for them to work, like FT8, JT65, JT9, etc., etc. So I just want to make that definition because in the slides that come later, I kind of talk about cyclic modes and not so much about chatty modes. So first tip, tweak your waterfall and use it. It's actually one of the most important pieces of the software. If your waterfall looks like this, you're doing yourself a disservice because you cannot see the weak signals. If you tweak it properly, you can actually see You see those that light blue there? There's a signal right there. And you can see it. And that's really important, to be able to see those weak signals, so you don't accidentally transmit on top of somebody else's QSO.
Bob,
Yes?
can you make that, I'm still playing with it, can you make that bottom picture, or the waterfall, move a little faster? It has all these, can you do that? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, in a lot of waterfalls, they move along, you can actually see them moving.
Yes.
Yes.
You can?
Normally you can set the speed
Yeah,
that the waterfall goes by.
there's an option for that.
There is an option for that, usually in the piece of software. Yes. And if you all need help with that, like I said, send me an email and I'll help you with it. I'll be glad to. Any other questions about waterfall? Okay. More tips. Watch before you transmit. This is one of the top problems in digital modes today. People just blindly go to a band, set their transmit cursor somewhere and start calling CQ. Bad, bad, bad. Why are some hams so inconsiderate? If you're sitting there and you're in a QSO with Indonesia, your first Indonesia ever, and someone does that to you, and this happened to me, you get upset. You can imagine. So this is my suggestion to y'all. Wait at least 2 cycles or 30 seconds before you transmit. Look at the waterfall, see what's happening. Make sure there's nobody there before you start transmitting. Don't spoil somebody else's QSO, don't be QRM. Why not follow the FCC rules? Yes?
Do you use a concept like QRL as the frequency in use on digital mode?
No. That's why you need to do this.
Got it.
If you just do this, if you just look, take that little bit of time to look and make, because there is a chance that 2 guys are going to start at exactly the same time. It's going to happen by accident. So it's not worth wasting your time saying, is this frequency in use? Although I do have a message that says, this frequency is in use.
FDA has a couple options there that I found. Just you can tell if you can set your transmission frequency. You can hold that. If you answer somebody and you're off with your receive frequency, FDA will pick you up no matter where you are. So usually you want to transmit in a clear section. So that's always a good help. Because if you don't, next time you cycle, you may cycle back on top of the person you just answered to. So you have to be, you don't want to start calling CQ where somebody else is calling CQ from. So you have to, so there's a little button that says transmit. Plus the fact that sometimes you can be transmitting on odd times or even times. And so that's why you need to wait, because sometimes, you could be answering CQ and somebody's going at the same time, or vice versa. So waiting for that odd even cycles to go over the course of a minute, that's 4 cycles. That's not a long time to wait.
So those are all good points, and I kind of get to some of that in this next
Bob?
one. Yes.
Into your transmitter real quick.
Is it running
Yeah,
out
2
of-
for 2 with batteries tonight.
Hey, that's okay.
And I checked them before we started.
Talk too much.
Not going there.
Oh, that's loud now. You better turn me down. Thank you, sir. So overlapping signals, that's another thing you want to avoid. If you see it happening, you need to adjust. And you also need to be constantly aware of signals that overlap. Why? Well, sometimes it's not intentional, but many times it's just poor operators. Overlap signals can inhibit and negatively impact the decoding of the signals. So you really don't want to do it, especially the weaker signals. If you're working FT8, you're trying to pull in weak signals from faraway countries. All right, so constantly be aware of possible QRM on your signal QSO. And how can you be aware of that? Well, if you start repeating messages with your QSO partner for no apparent reason, there might be someone transmitting right where you guys are. You may have to move. So watch the waterfall, adjust if you can. A lot of times the band's so busy there's no place to move. So So you just have to stay and gut it out. Worst case, if you do have to move to complete the QSO, hopefully your QSO partner is as smart as you are and he's watching for you to move somewhere. Any questions about that one?
The great thing is if you QSY on FT8, the software will still decode you,
Yes.
and so you don't have to worry too much about that.
Yes, absolutely. It doesn't matter where you transmit on the waterfall. The software is set up to decode you anywhere.
Right.
That's one of the beauties of the mode. Okay, levels, levels, levels. Set a proper sound device output level and an input sound device level. Don't make Q or M. Look at that. Look at this guy. He's got a serious issue with his signal. He was on 40 meters every night. And when he got on, he was just causing damage and havoc. So, this is what you need to do. I looked up his call sign, went to QRZ, he had an email address there, so I took this actual screen snap and I circled this, and I sent him a very nice email about what his signal was doing. And he actually thanked me, and he fixed the problem. So be aware of that. If you see that, don't be afraid to do this, take a picture of it, send the guy a nice email, say, hey, I saw this, you might want to take a look at it. He might actually do something about it. Questions? Yes.
Just on that point, if people don't have their email address on QRZ, they really should do it, because there are a lot of times when you'd like to comment. I comment to a lot of QRPers when I work them, after I work them, and they comment to me. I mean, it's a good thing to have your email on there.
I agree with Jim. I mean, if you're a ham operator, email addresses are free. Create a Gmail address, use it for ham radio, put it on QRZ so people can tell you about stuff like this. If you don't want spam, that's why you create a separate one for ham radio. Yeah, whatever. Just put something there so people can contact you. So here's another one, Signal Harmonics. I've seen people calling CQ, and when it decodes their message, there's like 4 CQs from the same guy. You've all seen that, the guys that operate digital. There's one really loud one, and then his spurs going off to the side. They're all there too. All right, so here's one of those. Here's a guy at 600. He's got this big mess out here and another mess out here. Those are the harmonics at those 2 spots. And that's because you have improper levels set for the sound devices in your computer and possibly also in your radio. So let's look at that, because this is kind of interesting. Now this guy is pretty cool, W9MDB. If you open up the help and about on WSJT-X, his call sign is in there. He helped write the thing. He's got a really interesting QRZ page. You really should visit it if you do digital modes and read it. But I had a really cool personal interaction with Mike Black. And he's actually writing an article for QSD Magazine. And he threw this at me and said, Bob, test this out, because this is something I'm going to put in the QSD article. These are generic steps, so you can set the levels right for when you want to do digital modes. And I'm not going to get into the details of this, but I would be happy to go through this with anybody offline sometime and help you get your radio set up right in your computer. But this actually works, because I've tried it. It works really well.
What about the last part where it says turn your rig all the way up to its full power but use the slider in the software?
Yes.
That's an interesting question.
Yes. It turns out there in WSJT.X, I don't know if I have a slide here that I might have one later on, but I don't want to jump ahead. There's a slider on the very right that's a power level slider. You don't have to control the power on the radio. Use the slider in the software. If you do this procedure, you can use the slider in the software to control your power level. Much better way to do it. Much better way.
Can you put these slides like on Groups IO or something?
Absolutely. I got the slide deck on a
PowerPoint?
flashpoint or flash stick. I'll give it to whoever so it can get up on the website. Where's our webmaster?
Or just put it on Groups
Yeah.
IO.
I'll give it to Bill so he gets it up there very quickly.
You can store files on Groups IO, by the way. It's very easy.
Yeah, if I remember, because I have a very bad memory. If somebody reminds me, I will post the slides to groups.io. And hopefully Bill will also put it on the NFRL site. So I don't want to get into those details. More tips. I don't know if people realize this. You can use full power for digital modes. You don't have to do 30 watts. You don't have to do 20 watts. You can use full power. I use full power all the time because I want to make those DX contacts. And there's nothing wrong with doing that if your levels are set right. Also, here's another cool thing about digital modes. You got a preamp in your radio, you got a separate preamp. You know, you can turn that on. You can actually pull in weak signals even better with the preamp. It really does work. Except when the conditions are poor. If the conditions are poor, there's a lot of static crashes and lightning, then you want to turn it off or turn it way down. That was an aha for me. And this should be ALC. Sorry, guys. ALC again. Remember, you want to set your ALC on your radio so that it barely engages for digital modes. Right, Neil?
Easy to do.
That's what he taught me, and that's what those steps do in that previous slide. It's just another way to set your ALC properly. Okay. Here's a good one. Why do you want to be predictable when you're calling CQ in digital modes for cyclic modes and not change your TX cycle? Well, you'd be surprised. If there are stations waiting to make a contact with you, right after you transmit your 73 message, they're going to try to transmit and contact you. They're not going to wait for a CQ. That's called piggybacking. It's a way to get a Q with beating everybody else out. Okay? Also, if you are the sought after station, like I was when I was operating K2G, here was an aha for me. Whoops. If you turn the auto mode back on right after you transmitted your 73 message, before you transmit CQ, if somebody calls you, the auto mode will actually pick that up and jump right into that queue. And you'll make more queues that way, as long as you turn auto mode back on right away. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right. When do you transmit to get to the station that you want, whether it be Canary Islands or Tanzania or maybe it's just Cuba? Well, you do it right after he sends his 73 or his RR73 message. Once again, don't wait for him to call CQ again. Jump in quick and beat the other folks. Now, if there are pileups, work them split. Don't call on top of him. That's what 80, 85, 90% of the people are doing, and they're just causing QRM on top of each other. Go off to the sides. Find an open spot. Set yourself up. Get your grid message queued up in the software, and right when he calls 73, you hit Enable Transmit button. You're going to get him. That's a good way to get him. Any questions on that one? Okay. Okay, this is sort of the same thing, but a little bit different twist. House split can help you get that desired station. And I've seen this. This is a very interesting situation. So you got two stations calling CQ opposite of each other. How can that happen? It's It's because they didn't look before they transmitted. So a guy called CQ, and then right after his cycle, another guy called CQ in the same spot. How could you ever make contact with him? If you call in the same frequency, you're going to be stepping on top of the other guys calling CQ. He'll never hear you. So split your signal off to the side. I've actually made a contact this way. Everybody else is causing QRM. You go off to the side, answer his CQ, he hears you and comes back to you. And because they're alternating, you can have that Q cell. Once again, don't be QRM, look before you transmit, and you will be amazed that if you follow this, you're going to make lots of contacts.
Don,
Yes?
when you say you split off, how far are you?
As far as the waterfall ends, find an open spot, watch, there's nobody there, put yourself there. I mean, literally, 80% of the time, maybe 90% of the time when you do that, he's going to come back to you. Because everybody else isn't thinking. They're calling on top of that other station who's calling CQ. I'll tell you another trick. WSJT.X will not let you put your transmit cursor less than 200. Right? It just won't let you. It's built into the software. Take your dial in your radio, adjust it a little bit. Now you can put your cursor down at 200, which is actually 100. And you got an open spot. Nobody else is there. You sit there and make QSOs all day. I see a lot of shaking heads. They know that trick. All right, here's another one. Oh, I've used this one. Move your center frequency, expand your horizon. You don't have to be on 14074 to do 20 meter FT8. When the band is so busy there's no room, go up a little bit. Go up into JT65 land. There's people way up above the end of the waterfall doing QSOs. Or go down. I've gotten some really cool DX contacts by doing this. Adjust that center frequency.
How much are you bearing?
You can go 1,000 megahertz. You can go 2,000 megahertz. Depends how busy the band is. Go look. It doesn't hurt to go look, right? Hertz. I'm sorry, hertz. Yes, not megahertz. 1,000, 2,000 hertz. Yeah. Move that center frequency. Look. Go look and see what's going on. You'd be surprised. Okay. Boom. Auto mode. A lot of people like it. A lot of people don't know how to use it, but it can be very useful. A lot of the programs do allow an auto mode, so you don't have to sit there and punch up every message. You click on a CQ, and the software takes care of generating all the messages at the proper time. But you should understand how auto mode works, so you can use it to your advantage. So, when you enable auto mode right after you send your 73 message when CQing, it will auto answer a grid square message received for your call sign instead of sending the next CQ message, speeding things up. And I used this when I was K2G. And I've already mentioned this, but I wanted to make sure you specifically saw this. It's auto mode that's doing that for you. Now it can get confused. I've had to turn it off because it can do some pretty wild things you don't want it to do. If it starts doing that, turn it off and go back to manual mode. Any questions about that one? Okay. Free text messages. These are those 13-character messages that you make up yourself. They can be anything you want them to be. And you know what? You can be very creative with these things. Hey, can you QSY 30 meters? I need you in 30 meters. So ask him. I actually had a guy send this to me. The guy in the Gars Club. Very bad memory. He was saying hi, basically. Sync your clock. I actually send that one. And this is another one I use a lot. Sorry you faded. You know, the bands are not the greatest, and there will be fade. And so if a guy disappears, it's kind of nice to say, he might still be hearing you, so tell him, hey, from my point of view, you're faded, sorry. And then please stand by, or, you know, thanks, Neil, 7-3. Yes?
I think it's important that you notice on your second sentence there,
Yes.
do that only with the 73 message. This isn't a free text mode. Basically what happens is there are 13 defined characters you can use, and it isn't the whole alphabet. What happens is an algorithm encrypts, if you will, those 13 characters, adds forward error correction. It goes to the other end, and it reverses the process. So this isn't like PSK31 that you can just type in anything you want in any message. If you do it in a message earlier than 73, the auto sequence won't work anymore because it's looking for a very specific message to know it's time to jump to the next one. And I agree, you can go to the manual mode. For those of you who haven't tried it, it's a good test of your reaction time because you have exactly 1.5 seconds to decide what you're going to do next, which is why most of us use auto sequence most of the time.
Another point, John makes a good point, but when I'm operating remote in Nevada, because I'm using a stroke 7 call sign, it doesn't send my grid. The software can't send a grid because there's not enough space in the message to do that. And everybody who understands how WSJTX works knows that, but I still get people that instead of sending me the RR message after I send them a signal report, they say, K4VBM stroke 7, you are GRID? It's like they gotta have my grid. They won't finish the QSO until they get my grid, which is really a bad thing for them to do. So I have to stop, and I actually have a canned message that says, DM's 26IF, K4VBM stroke 7, for those people that do that. You really shouldn't do that, because you break the auto sequence.
And when you go to LOTW, you get another grid anyway, right?
Yeah, the grid comes from LOTW. It's not what you collect during the QSO.
Yeah.
It's what the other guy has entered in LOTW anyway. So why the guy does that, I have no idea. It interrupts the QSO, and then you got to send one of these special messages to make him happy, so he'll finish the QSO. And you have to do it because you want the point, right? Okay. Here's something really cool I found, and this is from, once again, from W9MDB, Mike Black. This is a little program he wrote. You can get it off his QRZ site. It's called Time Fudge. What it allows you to do is either add or subtract the delta time to your current time on your PC clock. Because if there's a call out there, and a lot of these DX people, they don't know what they're doing, so their time is way off because they don't have time sync. And you really want to make a contact with them, or maybe you just want to tell them, sync your clock. So you run this little program, you put in the delta time that they're off by, and you hit the fudge button. And then for that time on, you can have a QSO with that very just single person, because you're now synced with him. And when you're done, you can do Alt-click and put your clock back where it's supposed to. Really cool little program that Mike wrote. You do have to be careful, because if you got the time sync software running in the background, ever so often it's going to resync your clock. And it could do it in the middle of your QSO, so you might have to fudge it again. Any questions on that one? Okay. All right, here's some other cool things that have happened while I've been doing digital modes. The Voyager robot raft, and maybe some of you saw this on the reflector diode groups when I put it on there. But I thought this was interesting because I didn't know. I didn't know what MM meant. How many people have made a contact with a stroke MM station? Okay. How many people don't know what stroke MM means? Yeah, there's some few people. Okay, well that stands for Maritime Mobile. It means the person's on a boat. They're actually doing ham radio on a boat. A small boat, a big ship, or maybe a little robot raft, which was KH6JF stroke MM. So that was something I learned. That was a aha moment for me, because I didn't know what Maritime Mobile was until that happened.
You can get some weird grid squares that way.
Yes, you can, and that's coming up. So there's another one. How many people know, how many people made a contact with a stroke AM station? Okay, what is it? That's a person in an airplane playing radio. The guy who runs EQSL, Dave Morris, he flies an airplane. He does radio from his airplane all the time. Now, imagine logging those contacts. You're moving, right? You're moving really fast. Your grid is changing really quickly. It's kind of hard to log those properly. Anyway, so when this Voyager raft was out in the Pacific Ocean, and it was a scientific experiment, and the guy said, hey, let's put a ham radio on here too. You know, it's got solar power. We'll stick a ham radio on there and a little, I forget if it was a buddy pole or on 20 meters or what the antenna was. They only operated on 20 meters. And this little raft set out from Hawaii, and they just let it go, and they were collecting all sort of weather data and data about the ocean. But there was a radio you could call and it would come back to you. And there's my proof. Basically there was an operator, a remote operator. The mode was always FT8. And when was the last time they refreshed this? And when was the next refresh going to happen? They actually pulled the logs back every 5 minutes. So if you made a contact, you knew within the next 5 minutes that you actually did it, which was kind of cool. Here was the actual screenshot of the QSO. You had to call the raft. He wasn't calling CQ. You had to know to put in KH6JF/MM. You had to know to generate messages and call him with your grid square and hope he came back to you.
This is a fictional control operator?
No, it was a real person. I don't know the actual, how they actually controlled the raft remotely. I don't know if it was via the actual radio itself. And they sent commands over the radio link, and then a computer there on the raft turned it around and did something to the radio. I'm not sure about that.
Working on that questions later.
And they actually sent me a QSL card. I mean, there's the grid, CL52VE BK28KT. 2 different days, March 7th and April 24th. 2 grids out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. What are the odds I'd ever be able to contact those grids ever again in my lifetime? But I thought that was pretty cool. Okay. Boom. Funny stuff happens when you're operating digital modes. Oh man. See that one? You know, back when people actually operated JT65, because there's nobody there anymore, kind of sad. FT8 has taken over. But boy, when I was doing JT65, you'd see stuff like that all the time, and you'd just get a big chuckle when you'd see something like that. Because people would be transmitting on top of each other. It was kind of, whoops. Oh, that's right. Some people really like FT8. You see it? Now this next slide is PG rated, so you might want to close your eyes.
Oh, no.
Some people get really upset in digital modes when you stomp on their QSO. Or this one just This one it brought me to the floor. I fell off the chair. It's like, you guys are all idiots. And I've seen worse. These were PG that I thought you'd find funny. Okay, now here is something really cool that happened this year. An inspiring competitor. How many people, when you make a contact with somebody, you go look them up in QRZ and you read their page and find out about them? Doesn't everybody do that? Guy, Wayne, WD4LYV. He was first place in Georgia when I started the grid chase in the middle of January. So I said, I got to find out about this guy. This guy that's in first place, and he was way in first place. And you know what? Really interesting guy. And I want to just read this to you. I was born October 3rd, 1949, and have made my home in Sycamore, Georgia my entire life. From childhood I've had fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva, one of the rarest, most disabling genetic conditions known in medicine, affecting only 700 people worldwide. Basically, this is intensified calcium deposits that restrict my joints from moving. With this disease, my jaws have locked shut, and I talk through clenched teeth, sometimes causing my audio to sound like there's RF in my signal. The hobby has given me a new lease on life as I meet new friends around the world. I have only use of my right hand to use a trackball to control my entire station from bed. I cannot move any other of my limbs at all. I enjoy the hobby once again, thanks to many who have helped me. W4K and Bobby, who is more a brother than is my station engineer, taking care of my station. Now I thought that was just cool. That inspired me.
Oh, yeah, right.
That's what ham radio is all about. And he was in first place in Georgia for quite a while as I was learning how to do things. And then we started trading places for a while. And then I started operating remote, and I started doing more contesting, and I kind of pulled ahead of him. But really cool guy. If you're on late at night, 40 to 80 meters FT8, go back to his CQ. Say hi to him. Cool guy.
He's real active in K2G in previous years. He was really big from there and from Sycamore.
Yes.
I knew Wayne when he was operating packet radio.
Yeah, he's been doing it a while.
Yeah, but that's been 30-some years ago.
Yeah, and I just found out about him. Just because, you know, I made some contacts with him. And now whenever I see him, I make a point to make a contact with Wayne. Anyway, I thought you'd find that interesting. All right, here's something, here's sort of a pat on the back for one of our club members. FT8 call. Something brand new that one of our club members is actually developing. It's a new mode based on FT8. It's KN4CRD, Jordan Shearer, and he's a member of the club. He's developing a new messaging platform based on FT8 and WSJT-X. It takes the robustness of the FT8 mode and a layered on messaging and network protocol for weak signal communication on HF. It's very similar to FSQ and FL Digit if you've done that. And I know Steve introduced me to FSQ. It's a chat system for digital mode. So you can actually do rag choose with FT8. Now currently there's over 75 operators in the group, many overseas, and they're making these weak signal free text QSOs using FT8 call. So I urge you, Google this on the internet, go to the site, download the software, give it a try. It's really cool. And this is what it looks like. He took the source code for WSJT-X and hacked it to get to this point. And it works. It really does. I know there's people in the room that have used it. So that's a shout out for Jordan. He's doing something really cool and it's really taken off.
There's YouTubes on it too.
Oh yeah. It's amazing how this has just taken off. and he just started it not that long ago. Okay. Last thing. Remote operation. If you've never done it, try it. You can get on remotehand.org. There's some radios you can get on all over the world and listen. You can ask the operators for transmission privileges. A lot of them will give them to you. And you can do it that way. Unfortunately, it doesn't work so great for digital modes that are cyclic. So I came up with a technique that works for me. And it uses something called TeamViewer, which is free software, and you put it on both ends. So you gotta have a friend. And I made a very good friend after 2 long rag-chew QSOs on PSK31. His name's Jerry Earl, and he lives in Las Vegas, Nevada. And we just became friends. And you know, we talk to each other practically every day. And I suggested to him, hey Jer, what do you think we try some remote operations? And he said he was game. And so he actually comes and operates my radio, and I operate his radio. And we use TeamViewer. So you have to set some things up. You have to set up a login on the remote computer for the other person so they can log in. You also have to set up TeamViewer with an account so they can log into TeamViewer and connect to the computer. And then it's just a matter of installing the proper software and operating it remotely. And I do FT8 remotely from Las Vegas. I pull the logs back using TeamViewer. The lag only impacts what you're seeing. It doesn't actually impact the operation of the radio. So if you get a little blip in the internet, the QSO completes. And then when your screen comes back, you can log it and go on to the next one. It actually works pretty well. And I'm not going to do the demo because the internet in this place sucks. Unfortunately. I would have loved to do that, but it's just not going to work, folks.
You just need a connection?
What's that?
You need a connection?
Yeah. That's all you. That's okay. We're already run over now. John's standing up. So, any questions?
Thank you, Rob.
And then.
Bob, thank you. And as a token of our appreciation, we have the traditional Plunge. And I think we could have gone on for another half hour because everybody's interested in FT8, and I got a lot to try when I get home. But thank you for sharing with us. And I encourage especially this bullet right here. You know, I'm actually happy that John asked me to do this because I don't think I would have volunteered on my own. But find a way to share your ahas with us. You know, post things to the NFR groups.io reflector. You know, think about making a presentation. Be an Elmer. Join in, you know?
Yes. Amen. Amen.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Bob.